Ever wonder why Palestinian can't speak against Hamas? Listen straight from the mouth of Palestinian.
The economical conditions of Gaza were like disastrous. People were upset of the conditions, so we started this idea to start a movement for the people. It's not connected to any political movement in Palestine. We did not even hire a leaders or point a leaders for this movement. And we started in 2019 demanding better living conditions, more jobs, and reconciliation between Hamas and Fatah. And unfortunately, Hamas responded by sending their militias to us, beating everyone they managed to saw. They arrested as much as they could. And everyone was scared because they fired directly at us in the protest. So it disappeared from the streets in a minute, and the leaders and the known members were all arrested, and I was one of them in 2019.
Oh.
So I was arrested for 3 weeks the first time, and yeah. My family managed to pay a bribe for Hamas's officials. We paid like $3,000 to get me out of the jail. I managed to get out of the jail, but many couldn't.
That's a lot of money. 3,000 US dollars for people in Gaza, like that's almost impossible.
Yeah, you are talking about a monthly salary of $400. So it was like a big money in Gaza. And many of those who went out of the jail, starting leaving Gaza, they never looked back because they lost the hope of making anything new of this condition to find a solution to our problems. And I remained silent for many years because my family was like it's dangerous. But in 2023. I was like totally upset of them because they oppressed us more. And I participated in the protest I think couple of months before the war.
Yeah.
So we protested again, went to the streets, and they were more brutal this time. And many of those who were known to participate in the previous protest were like tortured for months. And again, and I was arrested on June. So my family went to collect money to pay the bribe again. And when they paid the bribe, they told me that either you should be silent or you should leave Gaza because it's not safe for anyone to criticize Hamas.
All eyes on Rafah, what we've seen on Instagram this week, it is purely a social media, social justice warrior bandwagon gone wrong. Because why aren't all eyes on Hezbollah, where over 250,000 Israelis, forget the south here, but actually from the north of Israel, Hezbollah continue every single day to fire rockets from southern Lebanon into northern communities in Israel. Also as well, all eyes on Rafah. Why aren't the eyes on the rocket launchers? Because Hamas continues to fire rockets from Rafah into Tel Aviv. That all eyes on Rafah? Make yourselves useful, lads. Help us find the hostages. Help us find the hostages that are in those tunnels. Because if all eyes are on Rafah, surely all eyes should also be on the Hamas rocket launchers, these Hamas weapon storage units being placed right near civilian areas, causing these secondary explosions, according to the US military. I find the hypocrisy behind it absolutely blinding, because all of these people that have put all eyes on Rafah were all eyes on the Nova Music Festival on October the 7th.
He said truly that they don't want peace, cause when they say river to sea, that means they don't want Israeli even to exist.
In the Islamic world, going back to the beginning, if you go to protests today and you hear chants in Arabic, they're not saying two states side by side, liberation for the West Bank for a free state of Palestine alongside Israel. They're saying Khaybar, Khaybar, Yar Yahud. And what is that reference to? Khaybar, Khaybar, Yar Yahud? The Battle of Khaybar, in which Muhammad came across the Jews and he gave them a choice: convert to Islam or submit and become dhimmis and second-class citizens. And this is what's animated the entire region and the expulsion of Jews throughout all of the Arab countries in the Arab world. And so the need for a sense of Jewish safety in the region, I think, is super important, and not not to be discounted. And my fundamental point is that I do not think it's occupation that leads to terrorism. It's terrorism that leads to occupation. In other words, the only reason these things perpetuate is because Israel is continually attacked. And if you want the solution to stop, you have to have goodwill on the Palestinian side to commit to not wanting to kill the Jews in Israel and attack them. And I think leaving Gaza in 2005 was a perfect example of that. What did happen? I know you've heard these points before, Dave, that greenhouses and infrastructure were left there. Hamas takes over, kills their political opponents, fellow Muslims, Fatah, and establishes a terrorist statelet using all the international aid and funding to fire rockets and attack at Israel, invade Israel on October 7th, breaking a ceasefire. So accountability, I'm not denying suffering of what you're talking about for local populations, but who's accountable for that? And at a certain point, you can't say Israel is.
Before I address your questions today, I have a question for you. How come Palestinians are never asked the tough questions? How did their society and UNRWA education system groom such terror monsters like Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad? Why do so many of them, according to recent internal polling, still support terrorism? Why did they reject every peace initiative since 1937? Why are they more committed to the notion of destroying Israel than building themselves and investing in the future? What did they do with billions of dollars that poured in from all over the world for decades? More dollars per capita than the Marshall Plan. How come they are the only group in the world to inherit a fraudulent status of refugees from wars that they themselves started? How come ammunition, terror infrastructure, terror content are found in almost every home across the Gaza Strip? Of course, these are just a few suggestions to anyone interested in promoting peace in the region or reporting the truth about it.
Listen to this conversation between IDF officer and a civilian from Gaza and try to understand the mentality of Israel.
لازم يطلعوا كلهم كم كتير
يعني 20 كل الأسرة.
كم عائلة؟
3 عائلات.
تمام. يحكي مع الإخوة. أنا بستنى لحد ما تطلعوا. ما في عندنا كتير واقف. تمام يا أبو يونس.
إحنا بعاد عن البنك.
اسمعني هذا خطير. يطلعوا من البيوت ويبعدوا كمان نص كيلو، كمان الختيارية وكمان الاطفال. هذا بعيد. القنبلة حتكون كبيرة.
يا حبيبي انا بقدرش اطلع كل الناس هذول انا بدي اقل شيء ساعتين عبال ما كلهم يطلعوا.
يا اخوي لو ما بتطلع انا بطوح.
انت طخ، انت حر، طخ اللي بدك اياه سويه، اللي بتنزل الارض وتطلع.
واحد لازم يعمل كل شيء منشان ما تموت.
احنا بدنا
عندك مسؤولية على الأطفال.
بدنا نموت، كل الأطفال لازم يموتوا.
لا سمح الله بدك تستشهد
عشان تبين بشاعتكم. الله يلعنكم. اللي بترمي السما تتلقى الأرض. سووا اللي بدكم إياه. اسمع ما تقنعني، أنا ما بدي أطلع من البيت. اقصف البنك، اقصف الدار، اقصف اللي بدك إياه. سوي اللي بدك اياه.
يا ابو يونس ودك الاطفال يموتوا؟
انت خلص بدكاش الاطفال يموتوا، ما تقصف البنك حيطان. شو قاعد تقصف حيطان؟
يا ابو يونس هذا مش بايدي، بقول لك صراحه مش بايدي. انا بايدي شيء واحد، انت حتعيش بسلام.
انا بدي
انت والاولاد.
السلام اللي من عندكم ما بدنا اياه. السلام اللي من عندكم ما بدنا اياه.
لو ما بتطلع من البيت هذا انتحار. هذا
حرام. اللي بدك اياه سويه.
حرام من القرآن.
انت بتعرف القرآن؟
لا.
انت اصلا في القرآن ممنوع، ملعون. سوي اللي بدك اياه حبيبي، اللي بدك اياه سويه. كله بده يموت عندنا. احنا عندنا الموت زي الحياة عندكم. الخير اللي منكم بدناش اياه. بلغ قيادة جيش الدفاع تبعتك انه ابو يونس ما بده يطلع من البيت.
How do we make sure Hamas does not repeat October 7th? The spokesperson of Hamas said they would repeat October 7th again and again and again.
النصرية لازم نأدبها، وحنأدبها مرة ثانية وثالثة، ومش هذا حتكون طوفان الأقصى أول مرة، لا حتكون ثاني وثالث ورابعة، في 7 أكتوبر، في 10 أكتوبر، في مليون أكتوبر. إحنا اللي بنعمل مبرر. It is justified.
I really hope that the world can come to a place where we can say violence isn't the answer. I think we really need to be pointing fingers at is like Zionism itself.
What is Zionism?
It's the encouragement of Jewish supremacy.
It's not about Jewish supremacy at all. It's just about existing in their indigenous homeland.
But I also do think that, like, if you really look at it, the people in authority and then call themselves Zionists, they're not Jewish.
Israelis are not Jewish?
That is something that I am also looking for words.
Most Israeli Jews would identify as Zionists because they believe in the right of self-determination of their people. Would you say they're not Jewish?
I'm not going to deny their ethnicity or their identity. The ideology of Zionism isn't serving any good. It's really about like Jewish supremacy.
Not for Jews.
Right. But also,
why, in your estimation,
Why two states theory
weren't
can't
two
work?
states established at that time?
Listen to this.
State for the Palestinian Arabs and a state for the Jews. From Muslim point of view, and this is where it gets tricky. This is where nobody wants to talk about the ideological, religious dimension of this war. From Islamic point of view, the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the surrounding areas does not define boundary. Surrounding areas could be 100 miles, could be 500 miles. Is an Islamic trust that no Muslim leader has the authority to give it away to the non-Muslims. So when the Jewish people returned to their homeland, the Muslims outraged. And that's the most fundamental reason and motive for the Arabs and Muslims to fight against Israel, because they consider that territory as an Islamic.
Listen to this and know what these protests is all about.
Movement in the West is a pacifist one. After all, they just want a ceasefire and to end the war in Gaza. I don't buy it, and many don't. And let me tell you why. If you really wanted to end the war and to stop casualties among the Gazans, tell me why not a single protest demanded the release of the hostages. Don't misunderstand. Nobody expects you to suddenly sympathize with the Israelis. On the contrary, embarrass them. Force the Israelis to stop the war. They wanted their hostages, give them back. So why aren't you demanding that? Maybe because you fear that by releasing the hostages, Hamas might lose leverage. Yes, the war might end. Good news for the Gazans, but bad news for Hamas. They would be exposed, vulnerable. And if you consider them freedom fighters, your heroes, then you might be protecting them. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, we think that your protest is directly or indirectly supporting Hamas, by that supporting terror.